Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be diving deep into OnlyFans. It's a world that's definitely making waves, and I know a lot of you are curious about what's really going on behind the scenes. So we've got a ton of YouTube videos to look at, interviews with creators and insights from industry experts, even some takes on the bigger societal impact. It's going to be fascinating.
It really is. OnlyFans forces us to look at the changing landscape of content creation work and even relationships in the digital age. It really challenges a lot of our assumptions.
Okay, so before we get into all that, let's just start with the basics. What exactly is OnlyFans for those who might not be totally familiar?
At its core, OnlyFans is a content subscription platform. It basically allows creators to charge their fans a monthly fee for access to exclusive content. Photos, videos, live streams, you name it.
And I know it gained a ton of popularity during the COVID-19 pandemic. Was that just a coincidence, or was there something about that time that really drove its growth?
Well, there were a few factors at play. First, the pandemic forced a lot of people to stay home, so naturally they were spending more time online. And second, there was a huge wave of job losses and financial instability, so people were looking for new ways to make money.
That makes sense. But even before the pandemic, OnlyFans was already getting a lot of attention for its association with, well, let's just say, adult content.
Right. And that's a big part of the platform's story. Even though they do host a variety of content, we've seen celebrities like Bella Thorne and Cardi B join OnlyFans, and that definitely fueled the perception that it's a place where you can make a lot of money quickly.
Which brings us to a point I'm really curious about. We keep hearing these stories about creators making millions on OnlyFans, but then I also read a study that said the average creator only earns $180 a month. So what's the reality here? Is it easy money or not?
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of the OnlyFans myth versus reality. The truth is, those million-dollar earners are a tiny fraction of the total creators. They're often celebrities who already have a large following, or they've mastered the art of marketing themselves and building a dedicated fan base.
So it's not as simple as just posting a few selfies and watching the cash roll in. There's a lot more to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where the potential for exploitation comes in. Think about it, if you're struggling financially and you see these headlines about people getting rich on OnlyFans, it's easy to see it as a quick solution.
Yeah, I can see how that would be tempting, especially if you're not aware of the work involved or the realities of the market.
Right. And OnlyFans itself has a referral system where creators can earn money by recruiting new creators. That sounds great on the surface, but some people have compared it to a pyramid scheme.
A pyramid scheme? Wow, that's a pretty serious accusation.
It is, and it's a point of contention. Critics argue that the referral system incentivizes creators to focus on recruiting rather than creating content, and that ultimately only a small percentage of creators at the top of the pyramid really benefit.
So you've got this big picture of financial realities versus the hype. It's clearly more complicated than it seems at first glance. But what about the actual people behind the numbers? Their stories must be fascinating.
They are. And they really highlight the diversity of experiences on OnlyFans. We've got creators like Vanessa Sierra, who's originally a model and influencer, and Ellie Jean Coffey, a former professional surfer. Both of them found success on OnlyFans, but their paths were very different.
I'm all ears. Tell me about Vanessa's experience.
Well, she started out posting pretty tame content, just bikini photos and lifestyle stuff. But she quickly realized that to make any real money, she needed to start offering more explicit content.
That must have been a tough decision.
It was. She talks about feeling conflicted about the pressure to push boundaries and about the blurring of lines between her personal and professional life. It really brings up the question of whether OnlyFans is truly empowering or just another form of exploitation.
Wow. That's a great point. It seems like the intentions behind some of these actions on OnlyFans, like Bella Thorne's, aren't always aligned with the ultimate outcomes. And this whole situation really raises a bigger question about the platform's role in shaping the landscape of sex work. Speaking of which, remember that attempted ban on explicit content in 2021.
How could we forget? It was a huge story, and it really threw the future of OnlyFans into question. Essentially, the platform was forced to temporarily ban explicit content due to pressure from their banking partners. They were facing a real risk of losing access to essential financial services.
Wait, so even though OnlyFans is known for its adult content, they were almost shut down because of it. That seems kind of ironic.
It does, doesn't it? And it shows just how much power financial institutions have over online businesses, even in a space that's often seen as being outside the mainstream.
And what happened after the ban? Did it actually go into effect?
It was short-lived. There was a massive outcry from creators who were understandably worried about losing their income. OnlyFans eventually reversed the ban, But it was a wake-up call for both the platform and its creators.
It definitely highlights the precarious nature of this kind of work and how vulnerable creators can be to policy changes and external pressures.
Absolutely. It also raises important questions about censorship and who gets to decide what's acceptable online. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
For sure. Okay, so we've talked about the financial realities, the attempted ban, and the pressure on creators to produce increasingly explicit content. But what about the human side of all this?
That's where the personal stories become so powerful, like Ellie Jean Coffey, for example. She actually had a very different experience from Vanessa Sierra. Ellie took a more authentic, down-to-earth approach, really emphasizing connection with her fans.
I'm starting to wonder what it's really like to be a creator on OnlyFans. All this talk about averages and percentages makes it feel kind of impersonal.
Right. And that's why it's so important to hear those individual stories, like Vanessa Sierra, for example. She really gives you a sense of what it's like to navigate this world.
So how did that work for Ellie? Did that genuine connection translate into financial success?
It absolutely did. She made $1 million in her first month on OnlyFans, and it wasn't because she was posting the most explicit content. It was because she was building genuine relationships with her fans.
That's incredible. It really challenges the assumption that you have to be overtly sexual to succeed on OnlyFans.
It does. And it also speaks to the power of authenticity and building a strong personal brand, even in a space that's often seen as being all about anonymity and fantasy.
Okay, so we've got Vanessa's story, which highlights the pressures and ethical dilemmas, and Ellie's story, which shows that authenticity and genuine connection can lead to success. It's fascinating how diverse the experiences can be.
It is, and it shows that there's no one-size-fits-all narrative when it comes to OnlyFans. It's a complex platform with a lot of moving parts.
For sure, but let's be honest, it's not all sunshine and roses, is it? We have to talk about the darker side of OnlyFans.
We do. There are some very real risks and challenges associated with the platform, both for creators and consumers. And we'll delve into those in more detail in the next part of our deep dive.
This is getting really interesting. Can't wait to hear more. We'll be back in just a moment to continue our exploration of the world of OnlyFans.
Welcome back. I have to admit, I'm still thinking about those two creators we talked about, Vanessa and Ellie. It really shows how different the experiences can be, even on the same platform.
It does. And I think it's important to remember that even Ellie's success, while inspiring, is still an outlier. Most creators aren't making millions, and the hustle is very real.
Right. We talked about the average creator earning a surprisingly low amount each month. But what about those who are making substantial amounts of money, even if it's not millions? What are they doing differently? That's a great question. It's not just luck. These successful creators are often running their OnlyFans like a business. They're marketing themselves, engaging with fans, and constantly creating new content.
I guess it makes sense. You can't just post a few photos and expect the money to roll in. You have to treat it like a real job.
Exactly. And that brings up the question of sustainability. Can creators maintain this level of output in the long run? We've already heard how Vanessa felt the pressure to constantly push boundaries, even if it made her uncomfortable.
And I can imagine that burnout is a real concern, especially when you're dealing with explicit content. It must be emotionally draining.
It can be. And we're still learning about the long-term effects of this kind of work on mental health and well-being. There are definitely risks involved.
Right, and it all circles back to that question of exploitation. Are some creators, especially those who are younger or less experienced, being taken advantage of by a system that prioritizes profit over their well-being?
That's a tough question. OnlyFans does have age verification processes and content guidelines, but there are always ways to get around those. And ultimately, the platform itself benefits from having as many creators as possible. So there's a built-in tension there.
Okay, so we've talked about the financial realities, the potential for burnout, and the ethical concerns around exploitation. But I'm curious about something else. What happens when OnlyFans spills over into other aspects of a creator's life?
That's where things get really interesting. We've actually seen a few cases that really highlight this clash between OnlyFans and the real world.
Like what? Spill the tea.
Or remember the case of Chloe Carter, the science teacher in Arizona, who was caught filming OnlyFans content in her classroom?
Oh, right. I vaguely remember hearing about that. Wasn't it a huge scandal?
It was. She ended up losing both her teaching job and her OnlyFans account.
Wow. I mean, filming adult content in a school classroom is definitely crossing a line, right?
Yeah.
It seems like a clear violation of professional boundaries and trust.
You'd think so. But the case actually sparked a lot of debate. Some people defended her right to pursue a legal source of income, arguing that what she did in her personal time was her business.
I can see both sides, honestly. On one hand, it's her private life, and she's not hurting anyone. But on the other hand, it's a school. There are kids involved, and there's a certain level of responsibility that comes with being a teacher.
Exactly. It's a classic example of how OnlyFans is blurring the lines between our personal and professional lives and forcing us to rethink traditional notions of what's acceptable.
And it's not just teachers, right? I remember reading about some Royal Navy personnel who were caught creating OnlyFans content on a nuclear submarine.
I know it sounds crazy,
Yeah.
but it shows just how widespread this phenomenon is becoming and how it's reaching into all corners of society.
And the potential consequences are huge, right? It's not just about personal reputation or professional standing anymore. It could even be a matter of national security in some cases.
Absolutely. It raises questions about the vetting process, about security protocols, and about the responsibility of individuals to understand the potential impact of their actions.
Okay, so we've talked about the risk for creators, but what about the people who are consuming the content? Is there a dark side to being an OnlyFans subscriber?
That's an important point. We often focus on the creators, but the consumers play a crucial role in this ecosystem too, and their experiences can be just as complex.
Right. I'm thinking about that video by Caitlin Pulowski where she interviewed an OnlyFans subscriber who talked about his addiction to the platform. It was pretty intense.
His story is a cautionary tale, for sure. He talked about spending tens of thousands of dollars, neglecting his responsibilities, and ultimately facing serious consequences because of his addiction.
It's scary how easy it is to get caught up in that world, especially when you're dealing with content that's designed to be addictive.
Absolutely. The platform itself encourages engagement and rewards frequent use. And when you combine that with the allure of explicit content and the illusion of personal connection, it can be a recipe for trouble.
He also talked about how his perception of women in relationships became distorted because of his heavy OnlyFans use. He started viewing women as objects and struggled to connect with them on a genuine level.
That's a really important point. It highlights the potential impact of OnlyFans on the way we view and interact with each other in the real world.
It makes you wonder if the platform, despite its claims of empowerment and connection, might actually be contributing to feelings of isolation and loneliness.
That's a paradox of the digital age, isn't it? We seek connection online, but it often comes at the expense of real-world relationships and genuine intimacy.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the financial realities, the ethical dilemmas, the darker side for both creators and consumers, and the impact of OnlyFans on our relationships and perceptions of each other.
It's a lot to take in, and it's clear that OnlyFans is a microcosm of the larger societal shifts we're experiencing in the digital age.
It really is, and it seems like we're only just beginning to understand the full impact of this platform on our lives and our culture.
Exactly, and we still have one more part to this deep dive, where we'll explore the future of OnlyFans and where it might be headed in this ever-evolving digital landscape.
Stay tuned. We'll be back after a quick break to continue our exploration.
Welcome back to the final part of our OnlyFans deep dive. It's been a wild ride so far, right? We've seen the highs and lows, the inspiring success stories, and the cautionary tales. It really is a microcosm of the digital age, like you said.
It is. And as we wrap up this exploration, I think the big question on everyone's mind is what's next for OnlyFans? Can it shake its controversial image and find a sustainable path forward?
Right. It seems like they're trying to walk a tightrope, like we heard about with the Lux Lane video, attracting creators from more mainstream industries like fitness and music. But can they really become the everything platform while still catering to their core audience? It's a tricky balancing act, for sure. It's like trying to rebrand a nightclub as a coffee shop. You might attract some new customers, but you risk alienating your regulars in the process.
And speaking of risks, remember how OnlyFans almost got shut down because of pressure from their banking partners? That whole situation with the attempted ban on explicit content really showed how vulnerable they are to outside forces.
Absolutely. It highlighted the power that financial institutions have over online businesses, even those operating in less conventional spaces. It's a reminder that even in the digital age, we're still beholden to traditional systems of finance and commerce.
And it raises some big questions about censorship, doesn't it? Who gets to decide what's acceptable content online, and what happens when those decisions are driven by financial interests rather than ethical considerations?
It's a complex issue, and one that we're going to be grappling with more and more as online platforms become increasingly intertwined with traditional systems.
Okay, so we've talked about the platform itself, but what about the individual creators? What does the future hold for them, especially given all the financial uncertainties and risks we've discussed?
That's the million-dollar question. We've already debunked the get-rich-quick myth, and it's clear that OnlyFans is not a guaranteed path to success.
Right. Remember that guy Caitlin Pulaski interviewed? The one who spent a big chunk of his inheritance on OnlyFans and felt like he'd been exploited? It's a reminder that both creators and consumers need to be aware of the potential pitfalls.
Absolutely. For creators, it's about knowing their worth, setting boundaries, and not falling into the trap of constantly needing to push boundaries or lower their prices to compete. It's about finding a sustainable path that allows for both creative expression and financial stability.
So it's not just about making money, it's about building a sustainable business. And on the consumer side, it's about responsible consumption, understanding the addictive nature of the content, and not getting caught up in the fantasy.
Exactly. It's about being mindful of the potential impact on our relationships, our finances, and our mental health.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into OnlyFans, where do we land? Can this platform, with its controversial history and often blurred lines, actually find a responsible and ethical path forward?
I think it's possible, but it requires a few key things. First, increased transparency from OnlyFans itself about earning content guidelines and the risks involved for both creators and consumers.
Transparency is crucial. No more hiding behind vague policies or misleading marketing. Creators and consumers deserve to know exactly what they're getting into.
Right. Second, stronger content moderation to combat issues like stolen content, fake accounts, and the distribution of non-consensual material.
So basically, better protection for creators and consumers and a real effort to create a safer and more ethical environment. Makes sense.
And finally, I think there needs to be a broader societal conversation about the implications of platforms like OnlyFans. We need to talk about the impact on work relationships and our views on sex and intimacy in the digital age.
It's not just about OnlyFans itself, it's about how it reflects and shapes our evolving relationship with technology. And that's a conversation we all need to be a part of.
Exactly. Because ultimately, whether we love it or hate it, OnlyFans is a phenomenon that's here to stay, at least for now. And it's forcing us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our society.
Wow, what a journey this has been. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface, but I've learned so much about this complex and often controversial world.
Me too. And as always, we want to thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this exploration. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and maybe even some new perspectives on the evolving landscape of the digital age.
And remember, folks, the conversation doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.